On May 4, 1990, flames erupted from Jesse Tafero's head as 2,000 volts surged through Florida's electric chair. Witnesses watched in horror as 3 separate jolts were needed to kill him, a 7-minute death that made international headlines.
The system of giving the death penalty is so discriminatory and racist and just unequal. Poor people.
But the real shock came 3 years later when Walter Rhodes, the state's star witness, confessed that he, not Tafero, had murdered 2 police officers. This isn't fiction, this happened in America, and the system that allowed it is still in place today. February 20th, 1976, a Florida highway rest stop just before sunrise. State Trooper Philip Black and Canadian Constable Donald Irwin approached a car containing 3 adults and 2 children. Something about the scene concerns them. Inside the car, Jesse Tafero in the back seat with his girlfriend, Sonny Jacobs, and their 10-month-old daughter. Jacobs' 9-year-old son sits in front. Walter Rhodes, a convicted felon on patrol, is behind the wheel. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. Shots were fired. Both officers fell dead, each with multiple bullet wounds. Within hours, all 3 adults were arrested at a roadblock. The murder weapon, a 9mm pistol, was found nearby. Rhodes had gunpowder residue on his hands. Tafero and Jacobs did not. Within 24 hours, Rhodes cut a deal that would save his life. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he would testify that Tafero and Jacobs pulled the trigger. The physical evidence contradicted Rhodes' story. Forensic expert. The bullet trajectories indicate the shooter was in the driver's seat, Rhodes' position, not the back seat where Tafero was sitting. Gunpowder residue was found only on Rhodes' hands, not on Tafero's or Jacobs'. Rhodes failed multiple polygraph tests about who fired the shots. Most damning of all, a jailhouse recording captured Rhodes bragging to another inmate. Rhodes: "I got myself out of the electric chair by putting Jesse in it." But the jury never heard any of this evidence. The defense attorney said, "I had never tried a capital case before. The public defender's office was overwhelmed. I had 30 active cases and no resources for expert witnesses or independent testing." After a brief deliberation, the jury found Tafero guilty. He was sentenced to death. Sonny Jacobs received the same sentence. Their children became orphans overnight. For 14 years, Jesse Tafero lived in a 6-by-9-foot cell on Florida's death row. During this time, evidence supporting his innocence continued to mount. A ballistics expert concluded the shots could only have come from the driver's seat. 3 witnesses came forward saying Rhodes had confessed to them. Rhodes' ex-girlfriend revealed he admitted to being the shooter. Each appeal was denied. Courts ruled the new evidence wasn't sufficiently compelling to warrant a new trial. Meanwhile, Tafero's children grew up without their parents. His daughter, who was 10 months old at the time of his arrest, was now 15. By 1990, Tafero had exhausted all appeals. His execution was scheduled for May 4th. May 4th, 1990, Jesse Tafero's last day alive. For his final meal, he requested steak, potatoes, and ice cream. He spent his last hour with a spiritual advisor. 7 a.m., witnesses were seated. Among them journalists, prison officials, and representatives for the victims' families. Florida's electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, had been in use since 1924. For this execution, the prison had made one small change, replacing natural sea sponges in the headpiece with artificial sponges. At 7:10 a.m., Jesse Tafero was led into the chamber. His head and right leg were shaved. He was strapped into the chair. Given a chance for final words, Tafero thanked his supporters and maintained his innocence. His last words to the execution team were defiant: "You can all kiss my ass." At 7:13 a.m., the switch was thrown. What happened next shocked even death penalty supporters. Witness Tom Barton of the Associated Press said flames shot up from the headpiece. The execution chamber filled with smoke. He appeared to breathe and move after the first jolt. Witness Michael Mello, attorney, said his head caught on fire. 3 jolts were required. It was clearly a case of cruel and unusual punishment happening right before our eyes. It took 3 separate jolts of electricity over 7 minutes before Tafero was pronounced dead at 7:20 a.m. The artificial sponges had caught fire, essentially burning Tafero alive before electrocuting him. 3 years after Tafero's execution, Walter Rhodes, the state's star witness and the man whose testimony sent Tafero to the electric chair, confessed. In a sworn affidavit dated April 27, 1993, Rhodes wrote, "Jesse Tafero and Sonny Jacobs are innocent of the killings. I alone was responsible for the shooting deaths of Philip Black and Donald Irwin." Rhodes explained that he had panicked when the officers approached because he was on parole and had a gun. When they asked for identification, he opened fire. Former prosecutor said, "If Rhodes' confession had been available at the time of trial, I don't believe we would have secured a death sentence for Tafero." The Florida Department of Corrections issued a brief statement. The case was properly adjudicated according to the laws at the time. Mr. Tafero received due process. Walter Rhodes was released from prison in 1994 after serving 17 years for the murders he finally admitted committing. While Tafero was executed, his girlfriend Sonny Jacobs remained on death row. Her sentence was later reduced to life after the Florida Supreme Court found the prosecution had withheld evidence. In 1992, after Rhodes' confession, her conviction was overturned. She had spent 17 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. Sonny Jacobs said, "They executed Jesse knowing the case against him was falling apart. I lived to tell our story, but Jesse is gone forever." Their daughter was 10 months old when her parents were arrested. By the time Jacobs was released, she was 17. The system doesn't just kill the innocent person, it destroys entire families. Our children were the unseen victims. After her release, Jacobs remarried and became a prominent advocate against the death penalty. Her story was featured in the play The Exonerated, which was later made into a film. Jesse never got to see his daughter grow up. He never met his grandchildren. That's the true cost of a wrongful execution, generations of loss. Jesse Tafero is not an isolated case. Since 1973, 185 death row inmates have been exonerated, proven innocent after being sentenced to die. For every 8 people executed in America, 1 death row inmate has been exonerated. How many innocent people have been executed? We may never know. But cases like Cameron Todd Willingham, Carlos de Luna, and Claude Jones suggest Tafero is not alone. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia once claimed there has not been a single case, not one, in which it's clear that a person was executed for a crime he did not commit. The case of Jesse Tafero, executed for a crime the actual killer confessed to, directly contradicts this claim. Florida has executed 101 people since Tafero. The electric chair was retired in 2000 after several more botched executions. The state now uses lethal injection. But the fundamental flaws that led to Tafero's wrongful execution remain: reliance on informant testimony, inadequate defense resources, courts reluctant to consider new evidence, a system designed to finalize convictions, not correct errors. Jesse Tafero's tombstone reads simply, "Beloved Father." There's no mention of his execution or his innocence. His children, now in their 50s, continue to fight to clear his name. Tafero's daughter said, "My father died in one of the most horrific ways imaginable for a crime he didn't commit. The state has never acknowledged this mistake. They never will." The method of execution has changed since Tafero's death. The electric chair has largely been replaced by lethal injection. But the fundamental question remains: how many more innocent people have we executed? How many more will we execute before we acknowledge the system is broken? As Sonny Jacobs puts it, Jesse's last words were defiant because he knew the truth. He died knowing he was innocent and that the real killer was walking free. This investigation took months of research, interviews with witnesses, and examination of court records. If you believe in uncovering the truth behind America's most disturbing wrongful executions, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Next week, we reveal the haunting case of Reuben Cantu, executed at 17 for a murder he likely didn't commit. Despite no physical evidence, a recanted eyewitness, and a co-defendant who insisted Cantu wasn't even there. Join our community demanding accountability from our justice system, because sometimes the truth emerges only after it's too late to matter.